Hello, Miss Tyne here with your math lesson for today. Today we're talking about area. And as we talk about area today, we're going to be looking at quilt blocks. Now you made a quilt block on Thursday, and we started to explore how to arrange quilt blocks yesterday. So we're going to use that same idea to talk about area. And remember, area is how you measure the inside space of a shape. And the shape we're going to measure the inside space of today is this quilt block. And our units are this red square you see here. That's how big our units are going to be. So we're going to talk about each square inside of our block as a unit. Now, our first question we want to think about is what is the area of the quilt block, or what is the total number of squares? Now, a good way to think about counting our squares is to think about rows and columns. So I'm going to think about my rows, and I'm just going to count that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares in my first row. And when I have a square like this, I know that I must have the same amount, the same length or the same amount of squares in my first row as in my second row. So I know that I'll have 4 in this row, 4 in this row, and 4 in this row. And I know that I can just add my 4 and 4 together to make 8 because that's a double, and we know doubles. I can do the same thing here. And then I can add my 8 and 8 together to make 16 because 8 and 8, that's another double. So now I know that I have 16 units in my whole quilt block. My next question I'm going to think about is, what is the area of just the gray region? So if I'm only thinking about the gray squares, I'm going to think about how I can count those. Now I'm going to count again by my rows. And I see that I have 1, 2, just 2 squares in my first row. Wow, well I know that I can just go ahead and count those by 2 if I go by rows again. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8 units. 8 gray units. So what is the area of the gray region? It's 8 units. Now I want to think about what is the area of the white region. Now I'm going to think just the same way as I did about the gray region. I'm going to show you here in red so we can see it a little better. And again, I'm seeing that I have 2 in each row. So I have 1, 2. And I'm just going to count by 2s again like I did before. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Again, I have 8 units in the white region. And now I know that, first of all, because I counted. I just counted by 2s because that was easy for Miss Tyne. A way that you can think about this 8 and 8 is thinking about how much of our quilt block is white and how much is gray. Now, just like I said in our first question, what is the area of the quilt block? Well, we know that the whole area is 16. And we know our doubles. So if the whole area is 16, and we can break up the number 16, we can break it up right in half. And when we break it up, we get 8 and 8. And we know that 8 is exactly half of 16. So we know, because we know how to break up numbers, we know that half of our quilt block is gray and half of our quilt block is white. So when we're looking at our questions down on the bottom right here, our statements, we want to find out which statement is true and which statement isn't true. So we know right away that the quilt block is half gray and half white. We know that that is true because we know that 16 can be broken right in half to be 8 and 8. So no, The quilt block is not more than half gray, and it is not more than half white. It is exactly half gray and exactly half white. So that's kind of how we can look at these quilt blocks to see half and to see different proportions and area. So we're going to do this again with a different quilt block, but we're going to use the same questions. So right away, when we're looking at this quilt block, I already know that the area of the quilt block is 16 units because we have the same amount of units in this picture. What's different is that I don't just have squares, I have triangles too. And that's what's going to get a little tricky about this one, but we'll figure it out. We can do hard things. So what I'm thinking about here is I'm thinking about how I could take oops, that's not it. There we go. How I could take two triangles and turn them into one whole unit. So I just take two of my gray triangles and I can put them together and I can make one unit. So that tells me that each gray triangle is 1/2 of a unit. And I just proved that by putting two of them together right here to see that they fill in 1 unit of area. So when I'm thinking about what is the area of the gray region, I'm not thinking about how many pieces of gray I see. I'm thinking about how many full gray squares I see. Oh my goodness, excuse me. So I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 full gray squares. And I'm just going to take this one away here to see that I have put my marker back. I have 1/2 of a unit. One triangle is 1/2 of a unit. So now when I have two halves like this, I know that I can move my triangles together to make one whole unit. So these two halves together, they're just going to be one whole unit. I'm just going to put a 1 right here to know that this is one whole unit. And now I'm going to have the same thing down here. So I have my 1/2 and my 1/2 down here to know that when I put my two halves together, I have one whole unit. So now I have another one. And I lost my drawing from before, so I'm just going to add these all up now. I have 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit, 1 unit. I know these two together make 1, and these two together make 1. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units in the gray region. Now, when I'm looking at the white region, I have to do the same thing with the white triangles. So if I look at my next page here, and I'm looking at the white area of the white region, I just kind of put a little helper here to remind me that 1/2 unit of area is a triangle. So now when I count up my white region, it'll be a little easier for me. So I'm going to count up all my white squares, and I'm going to count by 2s. So I see 2 right here, so I'm just going to say I have 2. I see 2 more here, 4, 2 more down on the bottom, 6, and 2 more over here. I have 8. So I have 8 whole units so far. Now I'm using the same idea as before with my gray triangles, that my white triangles are 1/2 of a unit. So I see 1/2 here, I see another half right here, I see another half right here, and my fourth half, I know that sounds funny, but it's right here. So now I'm going to put my halves together. So this half and this half make one, and this half and this half make another one. And now I can count up all my parts. So I know I counted by twos to get 8, and now I have 9, 10. 10 units. What is the area of the white region? It's 10 units. And if I want to double check that, I think about my whole area. I know my whole area is 16 units because I have 16 squares in my block. And I know that 10 plus 6 equals 16. So I'll move on. Remember, we're thinking about the same questions just with a different picture. And how we know is we showed our work. We drew all over with the drawing tool that our triangles are 1/2 and that our whole squares are 1. And if we add 2 halves together, we get 1. And that's how we know the area. And I know I'm going a little fast, but you're going to have 2 pages to work on in Seesaw to practice some of this. So you're going to do just what we're doing now, but you're going to do it on your own in Seesaw. So we're going to get to the last little part of our page here, and this is what you're going to have to do in Seesaw too. So now we're thinking again about how much of our quilt block is gray and how much is white. Now I cannot take 16 and break it in half and get 6 and 10. That's not how doubles work. So I already know that 6 is not half of 16 and 10 is not half of 16. So if we think about the quilt block as a whole and what part is gray and what part is white, we know that the quilt block is not half white and not half gray. So I already know that that one is not true. And I know that the quilt block is not more than half gray because 6 is smaller than 10. So the quilt block must be more than half white because 10 is a bigger number than 6. So I know that if I'm looking at the statements on the bottom of the page, the quilt block is more than half white. Now, what we really learned in all of this is we learned that we can measure area in whole units and we can measure area in half units. That's going to be really important for you to remember as you work on this page in Seesaw and this page in Seesaw. You're going to be looking at this picture here. This is another quilt block, and I want you to think about how much of this quilt block is gray and how much of this quilt block is white. And I gave you some pieces to move around to help you if you need to move them around to fill in, to count that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 of it is gray. And then we can see with our half units how much the triangles are. Remember, this is 1/2. So if we have 2 of these together, you can move them around and see that they fit in just to make half. And if you need to double check to see that this makes one whole piece, you can move these pieces around and see with no overlaps that 2 of these triangles make 1. And that will help you do your work today in Seesaw. This page, this first page, you must do this first page. This you must turn in. This second page, this is a challenge page because this one, it looks a little complicated, and that's okay because sometimes we like to have a challenge. If you want to try this challenge page, please do. If you just want to do this page, that's fine. You must do this first page. You can also do this second page. That's up to you. I hope you're up for the challenge, and I hope that you can see how we're measuring in whole units and half units. Good luck with your work today. Think about any questions that you have, and we can talk about that in our meeting. And have a wonderful day. I will see you soon.